Okay. Well, hi. So my son now is 12. But the story that I'm going to tell you was actually a decade ago when he was 2. So when he turned 2, our family moved across the country, like 2,000 miles across the country. And I decided to go back to work teaching. And that was new for him as well. And also his dad and I got divorced. So when he was 2 years old, he went to school for the first time. And we thought this was going to be a great place and a great idea for him because he was always very, very social. He was very smiley and very energetic and was very enthusiastic about all things. And he loved having conversations with adults at age 2. And so we thought, oh, no problem with him in school. I was actually more worried about my 4-year-old, who was much more introverted and quiet. Well, the 4-year-old did fine. And the 2-year-old, we put into a very hand-picked school. His dad and I both were educators, so we were very careful where we placed him. And within just about maybe 2 weeks, he was biting. And so we realized that this was going to be a problem when the school administration plan was to move him classrooms, just switch his classroom. And I said, okay, I get that, but what's going to happen when he starts fighting those kids? And the administrator who had apparently run this school for 20 years, it was a very well acclaimed, recommended school with a unique philosophy that I wanted to believe in. And she had no idea of what she could do with him. And that made no sense to me. So I quickly realized that that was not going to be a situation that we were going to be welcome in. It was quickly clear that we were not welcome. I was glad to leave that situation because when I thought about it, I realized that having 17 2-year-olds in a room that was really the size of like a small bedroom probably was not a good idea. That's important because later on I realized how stressful that type of environment would have been for my son, probably all the other kids too, but some kids can handle certain things and other kids can't, and my son just couldn't. So I realized at that school that there was really no solution, there was no insight, and honestly, I didn't see a whole lot of compassion, and we were not welcome there. So the other thing I was thinking about that is that I think sometimes that we make assumptions about educational philosophies because they seem to be so ideal and they're going to work, that they should work for all kids. And the reality is they don't work for all kids. And so I think that that's something just always to keep in mind. So there I was in a new city, really had no family, had no support. And I needed another school, another place for not just one child, but of course my other child was also going to be coming out of that school. And so somebody, I just kind of happened to run into somebody and they recommended this other place. And so I called that place, and I mean, this will make me cry because the person who answered the phone said, oh, come on in tomorrow, which was a Saturday, and let's meet. And so we went, and I just remember my 2 boys and their dad and I were sitting on the floor, and their person that was in charge of admissions was just talking to us and letting them play and talking to them. And it was, very evident that we were welcome there. And luckily they had spots for us. And so my kids started at this school that I still, a decade later, hold very close to my heart. And the reason is that they had things in place that weren't really necessarily extra add-ons for my son. At the time, his behaviors were tantrums, overreactions. Well, he was 2. What's the terrible twos about? That seemed pretty commonplace. But as the years went by, we realized that, wow, for a kid who has extremely good communication, really good expressive communication, has a hard time communicating with his peers, has a hard time understanding and processing the language that's coming at him. That receptive piece didn't meet his expressive. And so we still today find situations where people expect him to be here because he is so verbal, and he really is not. And so, but that environment welcomed us as a family. We had meetings with teachers and administrators anytime something came up, just to make sure everybody was on the same place, on the same page, and that we understood. And that school really was there for us, just as a family, as our family was going through a crisis. And they remained this stabilizer for all of us, for the 3 or 4 years that we stayed there. And so some of the things that they had in place was that the physical environment was very focused for the child and for the whole child. Their classrooms were large. They had, very well organized, not any, what I want to say, adult or teacher materials out. It was all for the children. Their outdoor space had sand, it had water, it had trees, and lots of places to climb and run around, and lots of shade as well. And I think what was really helpful too was that we got daily communication. And for me, that has always been what I've needed. For a child who struggles with social and emotional, who has those challenges. I mean, I don't know if this is a good analogy, but I heard it the other day, and maybe it makes sense, is that it's kind of like when you go to an escape room, and like we're all playing the game and we know it's a game. And yeah, we might get a little like stressed at times because we want to win. But for a child with social and emotional needs, it's almost like nobody told him it's just a game. And so he doesn't understand why everybody else isn't freaking out the way he is, because it feels very, very real to him. And so that school, by providing those daily, we would get a nice little narrative of his day, and it really did focus on the positive. But it also pointed out things that, were, oh, hey, just FYI, like this happened. Well, that was really helpful to me, because then I would know, oh, it sounds like he's really struggling with this part. There's a lot that goes on when parents divorce. There's a lot of scheduling changes, constant. Then there's, all the emotional stuff, but just the scheduling alone can really throw kids off. And it was a mess for a while. And those daily check-ins from the teachers were really, really important, because I knew that Zach, my son, I don't know if I can say his name, but I knew that he had a good day, or it was rough. And then I could think, well, how did the morning start? How was the evening before? And I know that those are things that, honestly, since then, I've never had that good of communication from the schools. And even though we've requested it, I know it's a lot, because I was a teacher, and it's nearly impossible to get that and request it. But they had built it into the schedule so that the teachers had time to do that, not just for my son, but for every student in that classroom. And I think that was really, really what made a huge difference for us. It helped to settle the roller coaster that we were on. So that daily communication was really important because it provided talking points. I could say, oh, well, tell me about this. And then my son would have something very specific, because it's hard for little kids to remember their day. And then, the teenage years don't get much better. Then they sometimes don't even want to talk to you. But it's hard for them to recall the things that have happened. And then also, one thing that I think all parents struggle with this, but and definitely parents with children with special needs. But I think that when you have a child that has social emotional concerns, and they have undesirable and unexpected behaviors that oftentimes people are scared of and don't know how to address, and look at it in a way where they think that the child is bad, the parents are bad parents, and they can't see it as stress behavior, which is what I've learned since. And I'm going to talk about that in a second. I think what is really hard is for parents not to be stressed out all the time. So after my son left that school, then he was at my school with me where I was teaching, and that was good because I was on site. But then the times when I haven't been there, I pretty much worry all day, because I'm just waiting for that phone call, and I'm waiting to not feel welcomed again. Because even though we were at that school where we were welcomed, the place before felt really bad. It felt bad, feeling like we were just, going to be kicked out. And I mean, we chose to leave quickly before that was going to happen, but we knew when we weren't welcome, and nobody really wants to feel unwelcome. It's not a place for any learning to happen. And so I think the element of being able to trust in the school and in the teachers, that's really hard. And those daily communications helped that, because I knew that those teachers had his back. I knew they were going to help him, and that if he had a bad day, they were going to help fix it. And that was huge for us. And so I think it was about having a safe person and a safe space. He had lots of safe people there that he could go to. And that place, it prioritized compassion. It was structured. It was emotionally and developmentally appropriate. And it prioritized the social emotional skills of the children versus the academic task. And because, the point is, and this is what I know, because now I've studied self-regulation, and if a child or a person, a human, an adult, if anyone is stressed, even animals, if anybody is stressed, there's no learning that can happen. And we still have reverberations of that still today, where my son gets stressed, he goes into fight or flight, and he can't learn. He's in a survival brain and not a learning brain. So if we want, better academic outcomes, then we absolutely have to address the social emotional. And it really only takes some understanding that when you see behaviors, it is communication. It's a very basic understanding, but it is something that we tell ourselves, and then eventually we'll start to believe it. Oh, you're communicating with me. That's not words, but okay, you are communicating. And now it is my job as the adult to figure out what you're trying to say to me, and then why this bothers you. So I think that what I want to kind of leave you with is that understanding the self-regulation has been huge for me, but I saw that school actually did it very naturally. They naturally co-regulated those students, and it was because they had a philosophy that they were prioritizing social and emotional, development and strengths in their children. They looked at it as a community partnership with the parents, and so they supported our family as much as they supported my son. So I think that's all I want to say.